Namaskar to all the viewers who have joined us today on the Himalayan Heritage Foundation page. Today, on the occasion of Gauri Tritiya, which is one of the important festivals among the Kashmiri Pandits, we have a great son of Kashmir who has joined us on this platform, Dr. Ratan Parimu. Very few people know about the contributions of Dr. Ratan Parimu, and I would like to take you across his brief profile. Born and brought up in Kashmir, Dr. Ratan Parimu is one of the leading art historians of India. Dr. Ratan Parimu has done his BA from the Baroda University of Arts. He did his MA from the same university. Subsequently, he did his master's BA honors from the History of Arts, London University. Did his PhD from the Baroda University in 1972. And since 1959 has been continuously being associated with the Baroda University of Arts. He had been the lecturer in 1959. Subsequently, he became the dean in the position which we held from 1975 to 1981. He was the director, LD Museum and NC Mehta Gallery, the position which for more than a decade he kept on holding, which was from 2007 to 2019. Dr. Parimu has a wide range of acceptability among the art historians of country and abroad. He has written a number of papers, journals, and books. There are almost 13 books to his credit. Dr. Parimu is one of the revered historians, art historians of contemporary India. So today, on this special occasion, when Kashmiri Pandits used to celebrate the Gauri Tritiya, we have this great son of Saraswati with us. Dr. Parimu's contribution can be summed in such a way that there are two books which have been written by his students on him. So one of the name of the book is Towards a New Art History, Studies in Indian Art, Essays in Honor of Professor Ratan Parimu, which is being written by Shivaji Panikar and Parul Dave Mukherjee. The second edition volume in honor of Professor Ratan Parimu is under publication. So he has also edited almost some 10 books across his wide spectrum of dealings. So today we are lucky that such a great personality, Dr. Parimu, has joined with us from Baroda itself. So I request all of you to welcome Dr. Parimu. And Dr. Parimuji, it's a great honor that you consented me that you will be part of today's lecture. And on this Gauri Tritiya, I welcome you, sir. Namaskar. Dr. Parimu, I would like to know that many few people in Kashmir knew about you. So I would like from you only to know your initial studies in Kashmir, how your life shaped up, and why did you choose art as a career?
Firstly, I want to express that I am very, very grateful that this honor is being given to me by my friends, well-wishers in the Kashmiri Pandit community. This is a kind of basic question that you have asked. Talking of childhood, especially childhood in Kashmir, is always nostalgic, and one remembers it with a lot of romanticism. And that is how I remember my childhood in Kashmir, particularly resident of Habba Kadal. I was a student of missionary school, Fateh Kadal. Recently, somebody has in Facebook, I found a note on Samsar Chand Kaul, Masterji, one of our very learned master teachers. So I'm just mentioning this, that I remember it as a very good school, though not one of the top schools. Somehow, I don't know how, I have written a short biographical note where I have mentioned that one of these options that are given in the high school, particularly since it was a missionary school, we had an art department there. And so I opted for drawing, and as a result, I must have missed science or something. I don't remember exactly what was the combination. So maybe from 6th, 7th, 8th standard, I was making drawings on my own. My father, who was a well-known and popular doctor, Dr. Amarnath Parimo, he didn't, he didn't take any notice of this thing. But my mother and grandmother, they took notice, and other lady relatives, like Fufi. So often I say this with little bit amusement, that when a lady visits another relative, generally they wear that starched dupatta over the Pheran and Taranga, like that. So I would make a drawing without them realizing, and then suddenly they would notice, oh, he has made this. So Yachu Bhatni Banavan. So this Bhatni Banavan, that phrase stuck to me until I did my matriculation. Not having directly studied science, I got good marks in my matriculation. So I was admitted in science in the intermediate, first year intermediate. And somehow, I don't know how, my father felt, okay, let him go for art. And since I have a vague recollection how he found out about Baroda, but later I think I just found by chance prospectus of JJ School, JJ School Mumbai, Shantiniketan, in Bengal, and this Baroda prospectus. So Baroda had just started the degree course. So now, historically, it is very interesting that I am from the second batch. That is one of the earliest students of the Faculty of Fine Arts, Baroda, where this degree course was being offered, and now many other art schools are also giving degree course. So that is how, there wasn't any protest or any, any controversy, what I should be doing, because everybody else was going for medicine or engineering at that time. There was this phrase, वो लड़का कहाँ गया है, trainee करने गया है. So I also left for trainee, but not for medicine or not for. Actually, my father never, we never talked about that. He didn't have, like many doctors are keen that the children, particularly sons, should take the same profession. So without any problem, he took me and my elder brother, Girdari Lal, who joined automobile engineering. So he took us. So this is the first time we went to Jammu, and from Jammu to Pathankot, and took the train. But here, the eye opener, sometimes I am asked, did I see any artist's works or anything there in Kashmir? No, I did not see. Though I used to be fascinated by this today's festival. We used to get Our Pujari, family Pujari would bring the painting, Gorathrai, which we call it Gorathrai in Kashmiri. So I don't know how long, how detailed you would like this to be, but uh, uh, maybe from this childhood, one could make a slight mention that though, I mean, my paintings are not much known, and even you didn't mention that I am a combination of, what we call theory and practice, praxis and theory. I think Kapilavasan used to use phrases of Shastra and Prayog, that kind of thing. So maybe that is, I'm not saying that this, Visheshan or this adjective should apply to me, but there are also some few persons of this kind in the arts. Though in the visual arts, I mean, a musician or a dance guru, if they are very learned, they are more appreciated. But somehow in the case of visual arts, fine arts, painting, sculpture, a learned person is generally not associated with the practice. So anyway, maybe the Kashmir, childhood in Kashmir, it is reflected in some of my early works. And in a way, I'm coming back. I would like, I mean, given the time, I have so many things going on right now in my, mind and
no, Doctor, we
and
would
involved. So this is just to close this. But then I will have to shift to Baroda in the answer to this question. The kind of revelations, that kind of experiences I had with reference to art in the way, the 4 years and then another 2 years and so on that I worked here. Should I elaborate this on as part of this answer or?
No, Doctor, you have all the time, and it's so fascinating that your father, in those times when the people, as you rightly said, would like their children's or family members to pursue science in terms of being a doctor, being an engineer, and he had been so progressive. So he made you join this Baroda University under the fine arts discipline. So we would like to know more on that and how your journey proceeded and what kind of arts you started coming out in your canvas or in your paintings. Your Doctor, I would like to tell that this is a freewheeling, and we would like you to hear as much as you can share your details, because your works have been unknown, and I must also apologize my ignorance that I'm not I didn't mention about your paintings and artwork. That's my apology. But I would like you to share it and make our viewers know about the work you have done.
Thank you. It is I haven't had experience of much sessions of this kind, so I again want to mention this, confess this, that I am really feeling very proud that मुझसे ऐसे सवाल पूछे जा रहे हैं. Here I'm not sure if I suppose this is also relevant, because I would like, since I don't have opportunity, we don't have much activity in Kashmiri community in Baroda. I sometimes wish I should have been in Delhi these days, because you all are so active in the area of culture, Kashmir culture, our past heritage, rich heritage, and so on. But that was a period, my childhood, I don't remember anything of this kind. you know. So, I mean, we had never heard any such name like Abhinav Gupta when we were children, or even kings, like Lalitaditya. So, I sometimes feel this that um, uh, I mean, both ways. That somehow there was a period when we didn't feel that much pride of our rich heritage, Kashmiri Pandit or Hindu heritage of ours in Kashmir area, Kashmir territory at one time, and of course the link with the country, the whole country, and now the kind of involvement I find in many of persons from your generation or little older generation, I'm very impressed. So I would have felt happy if I had known some of these things of my own heritage as a Kashmiri boy those days. So in that sense, the whatever was being taught was a great revelation. It were simple things, but these were being done for the first time in an art school. So we had wonderful teachers like Anas Bendre, T.G. Subramaniam, and they were I mean, since it was just the beginning of the institution, for them also, it was a challenge. So these first few batches of the fine arts students, and some of these are very talented teachers. One, N.S. Bendre was, I mean, great master whose training was in J.J. School of Art, Mumbai, and K.G. Subramaniam had his training under Nandlal Bose in Shantiniketan. So, I mean, this exposure they were able to give us, and we had classes that today they will be most people will think how elementary they were, because it is the same classes that later on I further developed. So there used to be classes, something of Indian art was being taught, something of Western art was being taught, even for the first time aesthetic theories, and that is where we had one Shastri ji and we heard about Abhinav Gupta in my second year or third year, while this course in Indian aesthetics was being taught, and I myself later on taught Western aesthetics. I mean, that's another matter how I widened the scope of the very same subjects, but the same very subjects I am mentioning because even seeing few photographs of Indian sculpture or few photographs of Ajanta painting or few photographs of miniature painting. Similarly, a few Greek sculpture photographs or Leonardo da Vinci, painting or Picasso painting. They were just modern Western art was just being, circulated through some of the books that were coming. Just one should remember, people are often asking us about this familiarity of Western modern art or Western art as such, because I mean there are these great masters.
So, Doctor, just to intervene. So, as you rightly said that you explored the Western aesthetics and art, and you also studied Abhinav Gupta. So, art and the culture and Abhinav Gupta. So, and Kashmir. So, all these are intertwined to some extent. So, how do you see that the contribution of aesthetics and art led by Abhinav Gupta or his predecessors or his successors have impacted Kashmir? So, would like to know more about on this aspect from you.
I thought if we go by, some kind of chronology.
Yeah, please, please. Yes.
I'll come to this point.
Sure, sir, sure.
That is so. Somehow I began taking more interest in these aspects besides our studio work. So I would look up whatever few books were there. We must remember, as I was about to mention, that 1945, World War II was over. 39, 45 is the World War period. It is only after that some publications started coming, and by early 50s there were a few handful publications. So we were able to see Picasso's work, Matisse's work, in the sense that we were able to see earlier masterpieces and modern masterpieces of Western art. And at the same time, we were able to see masterpieces of ancient Indian art and other phases, little bit of, say, miniature painting. I mean, in that sense, we were getting little bit acquainted of our own art heritage of India, as well as the Western, or as a whole, humanity. Because even some, primitive art will be shown little bit, or Chinese art will be shown, or Persian art will be shown. So this widened our outlook and gave a greater. It was not like studying art to become eventually a drawing teacher, because mostly art student would end up being an art teacher. So this is how, when I continued in master's degree, later when I had the occasion to become apply for a scholarship, my choice was history of art course, and other art students would prefer to join again, some art school in London. But I preferred art history professional course. It was called BA Honors course. It was mostly Western art oriented. I mean, Indian art history at that time, hardly anyone thought in terms of, preparing courses and so on. So that those 3 years, I was able to go with my wife. So this great experience of looking at masterpieces of Western art in the museums, the studio facilities, working there. Though, I mean, I didn't have much to do with the studio work at that time, but some of the important art historians were among the professors at the Courtauld Institute where I studied. And it is some of those teachings which I was able to bring back and, implement in Baroda. And so I should mention that because of my interest in reading books, and taking interest in the art history subjects, even if they were very elementary, my teachers thought I was the right person for the post of lecturer in art history. So in that way, I started as a teacher, and it was as a teacher I received this scholarship. And happily, when I returned with the BA Honors degree in European art, again, my teachers thought I should be given charge of the art history courses. And so I was appointed reader and head of the department of art history. And we were able to create what you could say the intellectual output that that everyone thought, or some of those who were taking art education seriously, that they thought that this input in art history. So it is in that direction I worked 35 years or so, I spent as professor and head, first reader and head, then professor and head, in between dean. But the work I did as a painter initially, somehow in my master's degree particularly, and then I got a 2-year scholarship. This is what I call early phase. And there is a special exhibition held in 2011 of these works carried out between 1956 and around 5 years, period, 60, 61, before I left for England. That involved river scenes, street scenes, shikara, boat, because my association with Kashmir as a child is with the river, because our river Ghat was very near. Porshar, again a very famous Ghat, Porshar, Habakandal, so this life around I have used, because those days I was thinking that everyone does Dal Lake or sunrise or sunset or this kind of what that time it became somehow modernistic artists were saying this is like picture postcards. So I preferred the life around as I remembered as a child. Going to high school and going to bazaar, as often the boy, particularly I was one of the 3 brothers, was always sent to buy something or the other. So this going to bazaar, so that is that phase.
So, Dr. Saab, coming back to my original question, in Kashmir, you had a very fond memories. And I said earlier also that in Kashmir has a great tradition of art and aesthetics. And a great Abhinav Gupta's contribution in aesthetics is unparalleled in the world. Yes. Since it has been your subject, we would like to know more about that from you on that aspect of Abhinav Gupta.
I wish I had done a proper preparation for this. I haven't been teaching when I retired 25 years ago. So broadly, I mean, there are experts, there are specialists who know a lot on Abhinav Gupta. But broadly, what I would say is that in the personality of Abhinav Gupta, Kashmir-based, how, it is surprising. I was just that he has acquaintance, or I don't know what we would say in the modern context, how we are researching and how we explore almost every thinker who has written in relation to aesthetics or literary criticism, Sanskrit literary criticism, or on the this rasa theory, which we find in the this first author, sorry.
Anandavardhan.
No,
yeah,
the
Bharati, Bharat Muni.
Yes, Bharata's Natya Shastra, which is 1st or 2nd century. That is for 1,000 years of research, and all the scholars. He has all the list of everyone. He has the, he has commented on their theories. In some theories, he is criticizing. Some theories, he is accepting or elaborating, like Dhvani theory. Besides the Nishpati and Bhavas and so on. Though it is a different matter. I mean, now how do we relate his aesthetic theories with his Shaiv Darshan and so on. That becomes too specialized. But how he intellectually he relates to the entire range of the topics, scholars all over the country. I mean, somebody would be maybe, somewhere in North India, somewhere in Eastern India, somewhere in Southern India. And the way he was able to bring it together far away in Kashmir, that is really amazing. And in general, what interested us in our teaching in Baroda, both Western and Indian aesthetics, was that this realization, because this has some also implication, because we were also focusing on art criticism. That is those who do BA and MA in art history subjects would also become art critics. So as arts are growing, arts are developing, art practices, becoming such a developed phenomenon, architecture, painting, sculpture, music, dance. At the same time, theoretical issues with relation to these creative arts, to either to understand the art object or to understand the the kind of artist experience and the role of that artist experience, or the relation to the world around, how there are responses or theorization of such things going on. This was also something which was also inspiring some of the art students, or some of the students who were doing art history. So our students could also think in terms of some theoretical input, which may add to their own creativity, or if they are students of art history, we were often concerned that those who are studying our arts, that is history of Indian art, or music, dance, theater. Theater, I haven't been mentioning. Theater is important. Mostly it would be foreign scholars. So this was also in our mind, that Indian students also should go in this direction.
So, Dr. If I see the art history of India, it has been since ages, because in the Hindu way of life, art is considered one of the offerings to the divine. Mm. So do we had a kind of a school in India of art, or it just came as a flow? It came as a flow, and people started adopting on its own. So whether it was organized or it was unorganized, how did you see it? Development of art in India?
The question is very important. Certainly, I think in this, I may use this occasion also to mention that today, especially, that means it's the beginning of 21st century, maybe some books are accessible, and so one can know about various aspects of Indian art, or various mediums, work in masterpieces in various mediums. But we should, I mean, at least we, that is, who are specializing in this subject, we have to, this is an interesting or rather fascinating story, that how when archaeological excavations began, sometimes in the middle of the century, middle of the 19th century, the excavations began. There were some monuments already in the in situ, but in inaccessible places. Some monuments were rediscovered by excavations. Sanchi is a very important example of mid-19th century exploration as well as excavation. The discovery of objects, sculpture, paint, or let's say architecture and then sculpture, and in some way painting also, this has accumulated. Then this study began, sometimes or initially by Westerners, then by Indians, and the beginning, instead of the beginning question becoming more important, it is the actual material, that is which has to be studied. So focus remains on that, but the questions are very relevant. We have to accept that the religion is the basis, religion is the factor. The images of gods, are being fashioned. There is some iconographical description. So worship of images or setting up places for worship where the image is housed or image is installed, these kinds of things, they certainly are, indicative of the beginning. But I think the beginning of painting, sculpture, architecture, in that way, or beginning of sculpture, dance, we should see them as parallel, developments. And how much do we give importance to the fact that they are for the purpose of worship, and how much importance do we give to, or should we give to, the elements which make these arts? So I think this is how I feel, that is to say, since we are in the, I have been in the teaching context, when music is being taught, so there are the elements, the basics which are being taught. Somehow I had the feeling that there was something intuitively also there, that how do you do carving, and how do you do a figure, not simply that this I'm making icon for worship or idol for worship. Somehow I feel that this handling the material, the skills, and also naturally the observation of nature will come in that. All these things are playing a role. So we cannot only say that it is of course, bhakti has always been given. There is a very important controversial, question or debate in the period of when Kumaraswamy, Ananda Kumaraswamy was one of the major scholars. who picked up this problem, the discussion, because the Westerners suddenly began this question, that Buddha image. Instead of talking of image worship, that is in the context of Hindu images, even Jaina images, because Jainism is also equally old religion. Suddenly this Buddha image thing, was brought up by the Western scholars, and they mentioned that there is a Greek influence. And so Buddha image in human form. This anthropomorphic form of God is a very important aspect, and we have there have been very often references given to, let's say, from Vedic, from descriptions in Vedic suttas on various gods, and there are always descriptions which give the impression, yes, they are in the form of human beings. So God visualized in the image of man, and but this is where the bhakti aspect is very important. So Kumar Swami brought up several points, but one of the points was bhakti. How can we, imagine or be convinced that looking at a Greek image, the Indians started making image of Buddha, when that Greek image is not for worship, or at least we don't know. The so-called Greek gods,
correct,
which are in mythology and which are also in actual, sculptural forms are there. The Western scholars have never talked worship of their worship and that whole, emotional aspect of bhakti for them.
Correct.
So I think the bhakti has been very important, because even there is, say, in music, when the songs are there, songs are sung. I only wanted to mention that it cannot be just, faith or bhakti or beliefs, the only thing, but there are these basic elements, the medium, the skills, there's an inherent rhythm or various things integrated together and so on. Like in sculpture, a scholar like Stella Kramrisch talked about how the ornament is integrated, how the drapery, how the the clothing and the human form, human anatomy, and the ornamentation and all those things, how they are integrated to create these wonderful images.
So, Doctor, you mean to say that it was not only the bhakti concept which is ingrained into the Hindu belief system, but apart from that, in India, the people took it from the nature, from their day-to-day lives, and then integrated it and make a kind of a bouquet and presented it as a part of a bhakti or as a part of their artwork. So, in all this, where do you see that? Is there any kind of a meeting point between the Indian aesthetics and arts with the Western, or both of them are at different streams, or both of them are they complementing each other, or are they altogether different?
It's a good question, important question. But what I'm not wanting to think in terms of contrast, that is Western viewpoint and Indian viewpoint. Meeting ground or that kind of thing. I mean, those questions. I mean, one can talk on those questions also, but the I mean, my aim was to draw attention to the what we could say is something like art per se, art for art, art qua art, as sometimes the phrase is there. That inherent aspect in the art object, along with the emotion of bhakti, as an offering, as you rightly said.
So, Doctor, just wanted to, because this is a new subject to me and as well as to our many of the viewers who have joined on the Facebook Live. So, we want to know what are the different forms of art in times of prevalent in India from time to time. Different schools, like I'm from J&K, so we have a Basoli art, we have some Kashmir art is not so much famous, then there's some Himachali art. Similarly, there may be some different forms of art in different parts of the country. So just wanted to know from you what kind of schools were developed in India and at what period of time and what were the commonalities.
Yeah, that is important. I mean, it's the very stuff of art history. As I had indicated, I mean, I'm envisaging a question like this, that the discovering, how the whole process of discovering our art heritage is a very fascinating story itself, and the persons involved in this and the scholars, the scholarly work, or those who did the scholarly work on these, all that is very fascinating. So more than 100 or as much as 150 years of search of this kind has been going on, and there are either monuments which have been restored and made available for people to visit, or there are fragments and broken parts, or even sometimes whole entire sculptures, idols, which are shifted to museums. And in this way, there are lots of collections formed. Similarly, I mean, painting, of course, one medium is the mural. So they are in situ, they are in the monuments in which they have been painted, like in the case of Ajanta murals, still they are intact on the walls. There are paintings on palm leaf, paintings on paper. Once paper was introduced from around 14th century onwards, and larger watercolor paintings, or smaller, like albums, in album format, sets of paintings. The There was a time when Mughal painting became first known. They survived because I think many of them were purchased in the 19th century by European Western collectors, and then they became part of the museums there. So in a way, from the way discoveries became available. So initially, on one hand, we had Ajanta painting, which is local or indigenous, and let's say 5th century in a particular part of the country, Maharashtra, and Mughal painting. Hello?
Please continue, sir.
Acha. So in the beginning of the 20th century, when Mughal miniature paintings became known, suddenly everyone thought, oh, I mean, some of the scholars thought, well, we have another kind of painting. So there is Indian painting meant Ajanta murals, indigenous, and Indian painting meant Mughal painting, patronized by the Mughal kings, Delhi, Agra, that Lahore, that area. Then we have this scholar, Ananda Kumaraswamy, forming a collection of, besides Mughal painting, he also formed a collection which he said are not Mughal, and there he used the term Rajput painting. And he also, in that he clubbed together Rajasthan, then Central India, Madhya Pradesh, and Himachal area, what is today Himachal area, though it is also being called Pahari school. So actually we have large, we have main divisions, Mughal, and a very larger division, the Rajput. But now that term is not, found suitable. So it is the regional styles, Rajput, the Central Indian school or Malwa school, and in Rajasthan, the Rajas of Udaipur or Mewar or Marwar, Jodhpur, Bikaner, Jaipur, they have slightly, varying in styles, the stylistic characters. Similarly, in the Himachal area, even if it is a smaller area, but even there, the different states like Basoli, Kangra, and Guler, they have slightly different, varying features.
So just as a question arises, how do we differentiate? Means we have a painting from Guler or Pahari, or we have something from Malwa. So when we see a painting for a commoner, it looks like all same. Okay, somebody has painted. This is a, so how at a face of it, how do we come to know that? Yes. I mean, this is from a Pahari, or this is from a Rajputana style. It is a Mughal style, or somebody else.
Well, yes, that is connoisseurship. That one has to develop that. But before that, just I want to continue a little bit on these various schools. Similarly, in Deccan area, also miniature paintings began to be discovered. And there are some which are influenced by Mughal, but there are some which are local, which are actually Hindu Rajas and Hindu themes. Gradually, Tanjore style of, this Tamil Nadu was discovered. Karnataka style was discovered. Kerala has a wall painting style where we are able to see the continuation of wall painting after Ajanta. In fact, there is a continuation of Ajanta wall painting also in Ladakh and further Central Asia. So gradually we are now, and also Eastern India, Orissa, Bengal, Bihar, they have local schools. In this way, this is how Kumaraswamy visualized that we have had continuous development of painting. So Mughal painting is not just all of a sudden it is there. It is part of this
continuity. You mean to say it was a continuity over the
continuous development. You can say many rivers joining or many rivers branching out. And we find certain common elements like outlines are important. Often colors are
Scheme.
bright or colors are having slight variation, but it is different than the Western naturalism. Certain kind of naturalism is already there. We do get some differences in the facial types. One of the differences that we note among the styles is through the facial types. Though I won't say it is, it's kind of theoretical point, but as you said, layman. So I'm mentioning this, but there are other things also. Actually, mural painting was also widespread in the country. Mural, either the and there is also there are many evidences mural painting was also in Kashmir, even other places than even Ladakh. But in Ladakh, the destruction is not there. But in the valley, in the proper Kashmir area, there is a destruction because how could Ajanta influence the reach Kashmir, reach Ladakh unless it goes via Kashmir. That
Yes,
sort
yes,
of
yes.
thing.
So that is very
And in that
important.
way, we are able to link Kashmir art or presumed Kashmir art also with this pan-Indian mural tradition,
Okay.
of which the wonderful example is Ajanta. Um, similarly, we find architectural, you can say stylistic and regional types in temple types, which has been again a very important study during the whole 20th century. And also because architecture is the home of sculpture. So we cannot visualize architecture without sculpture. Though often for worship purpose, independent sculptures are also there, but the sculpture integrated with architecture is a great thing to have happened in India, in Indian art, which it's a very important aspect of the place of sculpture in architectural fabric in the Hindu temples. You will be surprised to know that even if Western scholars, particularly archaeologists, were digging, and uncovering and photographing and taking major drawings and also writing on them, they didn't think it was great architecture. But in the 20th century, temple architecture became a major project of American and Indian, scholars together under the what is that? We had some PL 480 grant. Food. We used to be we having shortage of food. So Americans. Am I audible?
Yeah. Bilkul. Yes, sir.
So I think American government gave us some grant, and out of that grant, food was being sent to India. And since it was supposed to be health, so the grant was to be accumulated in India, in Indian rupees. And then American scholars were funded by this money to work in India. And temple architecture project was a huge project financed in this way. And the documentation is all preserved in this American Institute in Gurgaon. So what I'm saying is that this is also part of the aspects of Indian art history, where in spite of documentation, major drawings and scholarly works being done by British or colonial scholars, the aesthetic aspect, the architectural aspect, in that term, it wasn't recognized, which was possible in the 20th century. So Indian painting, Indian sculpture, Indian architecture began with, with this, you can say, feature that though it is there, it is from India, it is integral to Indian culture and so on, but it's not among the great traditions of the world. But in 20th century, Indian sculpture is one of the major architectural styles of the world. That kind of recognition it has received. Similarly, Indian sculpture is among the aesthetically very, very rich sculpture in the whole world, and also particularly miniature paintings which are being admired by collectors all over the world. It has also been recognized as one of the you can say genres, world level genres of pictorial art.
So you mean to say that after the Britishers left, after the colonial imperialism left India, the world slowly and steadily recognized the great artwork of India. So with this, so India, you mean to say, is now coming off from that angle, and the people are now appreciating the art history of India. Am I right?
Well, that was an initial phase, but now there are both Indian as well as Western, you can say, prestigious scholars of some of the other aspects of Indian art. Somebody specializes in temple architecture, somebody specializes in sculpture, somebody specializes in Indian miniature painting, somebody specializes in Indian mural painting. Both Indian scholars as well as Western scholars. It is a prestigious subject to specialize in any of the areas of Indian art history.
So, all over the world. So my mind always goes back to Kashmir. So just wanted to know, see, in Kashmir, these small variations of art was always there. Like we in day-to-day lives, miniature painting was there. Then like today we have a Gauri Tritiya or Gauri Trai. So yes. We used to get those small handmade miniature paintings. Subsequently, we used to, in our Hindu marriages, Devagundi, we used to make that Divatman kind of a wall painting. Then Krool
yes,
used to be formed.
Door jambs
would
be decorated.
Correct.
And also there was a Vyug.
Vyug was there, Har Mandal was there. So do you consider these all as a manifestation or different streams of the art expression, or how do you see it as?
Yes, these are important. Actually, I wish, I had at one time when my father had asked some of these pujaris to collect the Gauri Trai. When during the period I was studying in 1950s, but somehow they are lost. So actually, what is interesting about Gauri Trai and this Vyug, and this Vyug is something which is pan-Indian. In Gujarat, it is called Rangoli. In South, it is called Kolam. In Bengal, it is called Alpana. So this floor painting is all over the country, and we are happy that even Kashmir also we were having it. And marriage occasions, there is always, everywhere in Orissa also they do something. And it is called, marriage painting. So on the occasion of marriage, how it is done.
So you mean to say that in terms of our cultural or ritualistic way of life, from Kashmir, Odisha, South or East or West, different parts of India, we all had that cultural and artistic unity?
Yes, so surely. There is one way or the other, it is there in most communities in the country. Only we didn't realize, or I don't know what was the impact of having been under Muslim rule for centuries in Kashmir. So I don't know. Or as I said, I remember I used to, I don't know whether, I'm sometimes blaming Kashmiris for some of the things which today may not sound, proper, we didn't have. I used to always think why we don't have Hindu musicians in our marriage ceremony. I mean marriage celebrations.
Celebration.
It is always the Muslim singers, Muslim musicians who would be there. So I remember in one of the relatives, as a kid, I sat in front of the music group, and maybe my head was, I was moving my head along with the rhythm of the music. And one of the uncles came and he gave me, this hit me on the head. So maybe, Bach Nagma wala ban jaunga.
So they want to. So in a
I
sense,
think
it was not looked upon.
Taste for music and this kind of things. Even this, I did not, see elders having during my childhood. But these are there. I mean, the marriage, there is so much marriage singing in Kashmiri marriages, and everywhere there are marriage singing, marriage songs in every community. In Gujarat also, where I have married. So I think these are all things which have to be continued.
Sir, there is one question from one of our viewer, Parul Razdan. She herself is a artist and she paints quite well and is a very contemporary artist. She has a question and she says me that to ask you why there is a similar color scheme in mural painting between the Kashmiri art and Mughal art. So she means to say that there is the same color scheme between the Kashmiri and Mughal art. Is it why is it so?
I am not sure if this similarity is there, but what is important is that our color technology was the same. So it is not that there's a different blue or different red, or this, it is the same red, it is the same blue, because the material source of the color is the same. So our color technology all over the country was the same. मिट्टी से कलर बनाया, पत्थर से कलर बनाया, chemical से कलर बनाया. These there are some we have texts, Shilpa, what were known as Shilpa Shastra texts, where these colors, sources of colors are there. We have also colors for dyes. We have rich textile, industry in the country in the past centuries, and they are also dyeing. So these sources of colors for dyeing. So all these things are listed. So there will be common sources that will give us the same red, same green, same blue, same yellow. So that may be one reason why the color schemes would be similar. But mural painting will not have same same hue of colors as the miniature painting. So I am not sure about this similarity. But one point is important, that our traditional methods of making colors more or less is similar in the country. Here I was about, before you asked the question, I was about to add that when we were talking of Kashmir painting, and I casually have mentioned the murals in Ladakh, and also you have mentioned Gaur Prai and this, but we didn't have a court like the courts in Himachal, Kangra, Guler, Basoli, who would be supporting painters. So in that sense, there is nothing like Kashmir style of miniature painting. But still there is a Kashmir style of miniature painting for the Hindu worship. That is, again, we are talking of this bhakti, or we are talking of this morning, the morning puja, and also we have kathas, so, or we recite shlokas. There are shloka books initially in Sharda, and now in Sanskrit, so the I mean, now that people, Vijeshwar Jantri, there's that special these Jyotishis who are publishing our annual Jantari, the same people are having those printed books of shlokas and stotras of daily worship. These were actually handwritten in the past. So there are 18th, 19th century such small gutka, sometimes it's also called gutka, where certain themes from Bhagavad or Dashavataras or particular deities which are the to whom the mantras are offered, the devata of that stotra, just as there is Swachanda Bhairav. So there is a special icon for that. Similarly, there is a this Tripura Sundari Devi. The description will be found in Panchastavi. So we had this kind of paintings as icons, generally worshipped, because I remember, I was kid and my grandfather generation. I didn't, my grandfather had died earlier, but my maternal grandfather and that generation, they would always have a thokur coat. And in that there will be these icons. And of course, another icon is Saraswati Ganesh. Because all the stotra books, the first painting will be Ganesh and Saraswati. And this, you could frame this separately and use it for worship in the thokur coat. So this, it is that kind of miniature painting style that we have had. So, but it has not been documented. It has not been. There is no collection of these. There are some digital images are these days available. But in Kashmir, for this, incidentally, I heard the term dhyana for the first time from my grandmother. She had a photograph of her father, which she was using for worship. But on that, there were also paintings. A photograph, somebody had done paintings by a traditional master. I think it could be, I have written a small article on this, on Naran Mursugur. Maybe he did some, panel over the photograph. So this is as far as I found in my house, but I'm sure many of the Kashmiri families would be having this. So my grandmother said dhyana. So the sometimes the shloka will also be describing the form of the, ornaments wearing, or how many hands the god has, what are the ayudas held in the hands. So this is dhyana shloka. So therefore, maybe from that the term dhyana comes. So the paintings were called dhyana, and people have thrown them in the river, or that kind of thing has happened.
So it's very important.
So there is two formats. One is the dhyana, individual deity, and so the mantra that is to be jiska jap karna hai, that will be done in front of this particular deity, then second deity, third deity, or there will be these small manuscripts which will have these shlokas, and inside there will be the Dashavataras. So all the Dashavataras, that is 10 paintings of Dashavatara, or some scene, Arjuna and Krishna scene is often there, that is Gitopadesh. And sometimes they show Krishna multi-headed, which is the Vishrup Darshan. That, so this kind of painting, sometimes we also have familiar, which is peculiar to Kashmir, this five-headed. There is an interesting article, I must acknowledge this, by Advait Vadini Kaul on this special form of Shiva,
Swachanda Bhairav
is five-headed. Actually, Elephanta image is also five-headed, though the upper head, which is fifth, is supposed to be invisible, so it doesn't have five heads. But it is the same concept. but it is more popular in Kashmir worship because of Swachhand Bhairav, and it has been linked with Abhinav Gupta and
Kashmiri Shaivism.
Shishya
Khemaraj.
Khemaraj. There is a tika on this Swachhand Bhairav Stotra. So this kind of paintings have been there, and in this case certainly related to the worship, not court painting, but it has not been properly compiled. So I think, I mean, this broad view of three forms of art: painting, sculpture, and architecture, which you had asked me the question, I have kind of mentioned the Kashmir part in this broad picture.
No, sir, it was quite illuminating talk, because we have been worshipping deities, and I remember, as you rightly said, there were used to be these paintings on which Dhyan Shloka was written. So you mean to say that first it was a Dhyan Shloka, and on the basis of Dhyan Shloka, the painting was then later created or painted?
Yes, it is always like that.
Like that.
I mean, even our art historical methodology, when we find a deity, we will look for the Dhyan Shloka, the relevant Dhyan Shloka.
Okay. So all the Dhyan Shlokas you mean to say they are part of some scripture, and based on that, then later paintings were used to be.
Yes, many of these Dhyan Shlokas are also pan-Indian.
But in Kashmir, Dr. Sahab, I have seen a peculiarity that in Kashmir, today is a Gauri Tritiya, and we used to worship Saraswati, but in Kashmir, the Saraswati is not sitting on the swan, it is sitting on a line. Why is it so?
Actually, I am also surprised how it is so.
Okay.
I mean, in a way, the three goddesses, Durga and
Lakshmi and
Saraswati, they are also supposed to be one, one Shakti. I mean, roops of the different roops of the same Shakti. So in that sense, even the lion could be there. One has to go a little deeper into this question.
So you raised very important aspect. You said that Kashmir has had not an organized kind of, or there was no political or ruling patronage to the miniature art. But yes, as a bhakti, it was made. Bhakti painting was done, and it was distributed at a individual level.
I have the feeling that some of the pujaris themselves were good artists.
Yes.
And since this was a tradition, so they learned by tradition. They learned by mastering the previous style and so on, and continue. And because they are from Kashmir, they are not a direct offshoot of Pahadis. See, in Pahadi painting, what has happened is that these are all offshoots. Guler, Kangra, Basoli, Chamba, these 5-6 places, they're all offshoots. In some ways, this style connects with, let's say, Chamba a little bit. The Kashmir, what we see in Kashmiri Pandit homes. But sometimes I have the feeling that can we, just as there is supposed to be an imaginary Kashmir style which influenced Ladakh, which is 10th, 11th century, and which also influenced the Spiti area. There is a Tabo monastery there. There is a link there between Ladakh and Tabo, and also Kashmir Valley. But we don't have any example in Kashmir Valley. So there are all those scholars who have written on them. They are talking of a Kashmir style. That is why and there is incidentally an earlier example, that is in Gilgit. There are famous Gilgit manuscripts discovered. Yes, I think those who are Shaiva scholars would have come across them. I think they are probably I mean, since I'm not a manuscript expert, but I think Gilgit manuscripts may be relating to both Buddhist texts as well as to Shaivite texts. So anyway, there is in the Bhojpatra, the palm leaf or that kind of material, there was always a wood cover, a wood plank up above and wood below. Between them, these folios will be there of Bhojpatra, birch bark. And there would be paintings on that, on that wooden plank. And so the one plank has been found, which they are dating 5th, 6th century, which is stylistically earlier to Ladakh as well as to, I think, some monastery they are saying in Spiti, which is also of early phase. So I have the feeling that the Kashmiri Pandit artists in the 18th, 19th century probably also had a link with this style. Somehow, so there is a highly simplified style in these dhyana paintings. So there is some continuation, maybe subconscious, I don't know, of the mural tradition also in this. I have that feeling. I'm just, you can say, for the first time publicly, mentioning this. So, I mean, this style, I wonder why they have all given up. Those who were experts of this style, why they have given up. I am valuing. I have got 5 paintings of this kind, and I am valuing them, and I wonder.
So it may be because of the political and turmoil which the Kashmir had from time to time. So
that shouldn't people, we blame our Kashmiri Pandit?
No, see, sir, I agree with that.
Because many people have sold. I remember it just happened that we are talking. Earlier I began. I casually referred to my early phase paintings, which are of Kashmir subjects. I had an exhibition in Nido's Hotel in 1958, and seeing in 1958 Nido's Hotel, I had exhibition of those paintings, that style painting, and first time I came to know there were Muslim art dealers. So one Muslim art dealer, having looked at my paintings, because there was some influence of this traditional, outlines, he brought this manuscript to me. ये मैंने लिया है, आप जरा देखिए उसको, and particularly, naturally, they want to know quality and so on. It was really very good quality. So many of our, this, I'm sorry to use that term, that Gaur community.
Our priestly class, priestly class. You mean to say the priestly class later on moved away from this kind of tradition because they found it other avenues more lucrative, and then this art form slowly and steadily died out on its own.
Yeah, that is how we could explain why we didn't find, excepting this Narayan Mursugur is the one example, one name we know, who was a traditional artist, and he would have been living even in 1910 or so, he would have been still alive.
So, Doctor, is there anything in your mind that we can revive this kind of art form back among Kashmiri Hindu diaspora across the world? Do you envisage in some kind of a future for this fine art?
Well, one way is that if we, identify ourselves with the kind of icons that our forefathers were worshipping, and we have their iconography. I remember in the article that Advait Padini ji has written on Swachchanda Bhairav. Somebody has adopted the imagery of this 5-headed Shiva, which is being carried out. Shiva has a Vahana, which is the bull. But in this, the Vahana is a human being. Human being is carrying
yes, it is
500 Shiva.
It is Swachhanda Bhairav carried by Ishvara or Ishvara. He's on
we call it Narvahana.
Yes,
we call it Narvahana. That is when the Vahana, which is carrying the god, is in the human form. There are several other gods who have Narvahanas. So in that sense, it is called Narvahana. And now we can identify it as
no, this is important. Why? Because I myself being a student of Kashmiri Shaivism, and Swachhanda Bhairav is the para formation of absolute. So when we say Swachhanda Bhairav means Swachhanda means spontaneous. So it is believed as per our tantric traditions and as per Kashmiri Shaivism that Swachhanda, when descends down, he is being carried by Ishvara on his Ishvara becomes his Vahana. So that is how it is as per our Kashmiri Shaivism, Kashmiri Shaivite traditions being envisaged.
Yeah. So anyway, I am saying that if we identify ourselves with some of these icons. Which our forefathers were worshipping, and get them painted and use them either for worship or even as art object, in the house. This kind of attempt can be done.
Yeah. So, Doctor, do you have these Dhyan Shlokas, even if we start some kind of movement on this? So, do you have the Dhyan Shlokas of some of the deities which Kashmiri Hindus used to worship, or do we have to seek it from other sources?
No, one is this finding out this book, this Gutka book. छोटी किताब होती है, I am sure some family may have this handwritten, manuscript form, which will have a few paintings also. There are in this archive, in the government archive
in Kashmir, Cultural Academy.
Yes, Kashmir. I had started a study long back, but I mean that is a black and white period, so I got some black and white photographs. अभी तो कुछ कलर में मिलते हैं, so I think that some artists could make adaptations, and some families can use them. I am not saying necessarily for worship, because again, if it is the icon is to be used for worship, there is some pran pratishtha and that kind of ritual to be performed. But anyway, I mean, it is there. Another format I want to mention is Om format. This is also very peculiar to Kashmir. If you write the alphabet Om, and its upper part, its middle part, its lower curve, all those, there are supposed to be particular gods inhabiting in those parts of that akshar.
So can you explain more on it?
Interesting.
Doctor, can you explain a bit more about these deities who are these forming the part of Om? Which one is at the upper half?
I think it would be Brahma, Vishnu,
and Mahesh,
and Shiva.
And what about the
half? Shiva is this. Ishwar is the name which again keeps coming. Or Ishan.
Okay.
In fact, we could exchange, these. I mean, digital photographs of these. जिन के पास घर में इस तरह के अभी भी मौजूद हो, उसका बना के, like I am trying to collect the digital images. So at one place we could, and maybe a small publication can be done in future.
Doctor, this is the book I have. I mean, you were referring to this one. This is the cover page of Dr. Shashi Shekhar Toshkani's book, Hindu Rites and Rituals of Kashmiri Brahmins. I think this was near me, and I could see what you wanted to say. That
आप कुछ दिखा रहे हैं?
हाँ, मैं दिखा रहा था डॉक्टर साहब, ये बुक आप देख लीजिए,
नहीं, इसमें तो कुछ आ गया बीच में मेरे में.
Okay, okay, okay. I think you were speaking about this book only, means this formation of Om, means different gods adorning the different parts of. Uh, anyway, I will say. Anyway, leave it, sir. I will send it to you. I think we can take it up a little
वीडियो
later.
में कुछ हो गया?
नहीं नहीं नहीं. You are visible. You are visible. We will discuss it little later.
आपका कुछ?
नहीं नहीं. I am able to see you, Doctor Saab.
No, but I cannot see you.
No issues, but we are able to see you.
Okay, okay.
So, Dr. Saab, I think it was a very enlightening session. Just one question was there from a viewer. I would not. She wanted to know that murals are very age-old paint works. Miniature murals are very age-old, and can they copy it for commercial use?
Pardon? Murals? You're talking about?
Murals. There's a miniature murals are there. Can we copy it for commercial use?
Miniature paintings or murals?
Miniature murals.
No. Mural painting is a wall painting, so there cannot be miniature mural.
Okay.
Miniature paintings are on small size paper.
So is copying a good thing or not good?
हाँ, copying करते हैं. See, Ajanta, there are so many copies being painted and sold and so on.
Okay. So overall, Dr. Saab, it was a very enlightening session for me in particular, and I think many of the viewers who had joined today from last 1.5 hours, we have been listening to your personal journey, different forms of art. It was really an enlightening, and I think it has enhanced our understanding of the different forms of art as well, different kinds of schools of art which we had in our country. Definitely, I think we may have to continue sometime later with you once again, understanding the differences between the contemporary art and the contemporary Indian art and the contemporary Western art, and how the two co-terminate and or how they define the contemporary worldview. I think we will leave it today as of now, and we will in future connect again. So I personally, I'm so thankful to you that you spared your valuable time. It is a listening to an encyclopedia. You are a vast ocean of knowledge. And I'm so honored and so feel privileged that you consented to come for this kind of a session with us and gave us a great valuable information, which I think is not in a public domain as such. And very few people, we may talk a lot on the food as different forms of political issues, day-to-day life. But art is something which is very connecting. It immediately connects one to the different aspects of our surroundings. And you were kind enough to explain us all these facets of art. And anything you wanted to share with us, which I may have missed, or you wanted to say, Dr.
Saab? Well, I can say it was my privilege also. Rather, I mean, it's the first time I'm speaking, though I cannot see my listeners, but first time I am speaking to my Kashmiri brothers. So it will be an important occasion for me to remember.
No, many people have been watching you, listening to you from last 1.5 hours, and we will take this session forward sometime soon after a couple of weeks. Sure. And I'm highly privileged. Again, my pranam to you that you gave a time to us and enhanced us a lot. Sir, please accept my veneration and my whole pranam to you.
My pranams to all viewers.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Namaskar.
Namaskar.